And now for more insight, we welcome Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. Behnam, thank you so much as always. So 5 Americans are flying to freedom. Talk to us about the significance of this moment and the kind of reception they are likely to receive first in Qatar and then later in the United States itself.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Indeed, it will be a happy day for the families of those 5 dual nationals, the 5 Iranian Americans who were held hostage for several years. Some of them, as you mentioned, held hostage for as long as 8 years inside the Islamic Republic under horrible conditions in notorious prisons like Evin prison, as well as elsewhere. The families then are relieved. They have been trying to lobby for many years now across different administrations to raise the plight of their families, to get the stories into the news, as well as to get their loved ones home. But the problem is, the story doesn't end there. It doesn't even end with the swap. It doesn't even end with the reception, be it in America or be it in Qatar. The story is almost certainly not going to end because the government of the Islamic Republic has been taking hostages as long as it's been around. Remember, it was an act of hostage taking that divorced Iran from America in 1979. And more importantly, more recently, you've had Iranian officials talk about hostage taking as a way to solve Iran's macroeconomic problems. And with this deal, with the correspondent that you just had on mentioning it not just being a 5 for 5, which again is a highly asymmetric 5 for 5, 5 Americans who are hostages against their will, but otherwise 5 Iranian nationals who are actually criminals prosecuted here in the United States. Putting the asymmetry of that aside, it's about over $1 billion per hostage. So expect Iran to continue to do this, sadly. And indeed, you saw the story just a few days ago of international media confirming the case of a Swedish diplomat, a young gentleman in his mid-30s held in Iran as a hostage for over 500 days. So this story, unfortunately, is going to be set to continue.
Very disturbing, the precedent that you are outlining right now. Give us a sense, though, your take on what this all means for the Iranian nuclear deal and talks around it. Some suggest this agreement between Tehran and Washington will move those talks even closer to some kind of deal. At the same time, reports that the IAE says its inspectors are being turned away. So what exactly does that mean for talks around some kind of nuclear agreement down the line?
I'm very glad you mentioned that because despite the Biden administration in Washington and the Raisi government in Tehran trying to say that hostage diplomacy and nuclear diplomacy are not at all linked, if you look at the behavior, if you look at the rhetoric, if you look at the phasing, there is a great, imperative for media, think tanks, other folks to connect the dots because indeed they do look linked. For instance, the Biden administration was looking for a bigger deal than the JCPOA, than the deal itself, and now has been looking for all sorts of interim freezes and attempts to cap the nuclear program or halt everything in place. The problem being, of course, that Iran's stockpile has grown as the Biden administration has tried to do this, and that money, as you know, is fungible. So if there's money gained from a hostage deal, it can be used to underwrite these other destabilizing programs that many are worrying about. I personally am of the view in relation to the IAEA visa denial and limited inspection story that this is Iran being able to fight multiple fronts at once. More recently, last week, you had the E3 and the European Union talk about retaining their sovereign missile sanctions on the Islamic Republic, select sanctions that were designed to sunset at mid-October of this year per the 2231 resolution and per the JCPOA nuclear deal. It looks like the UN sanctions will go, but the sovereign EU and UK missile sanctions will stay. This is, again, Iran trying to fight against the Europeans and divide the transatlantic community by circumscribing and limiting access to its nuclear program to generate more fear so it can weaponize that fear and get more sanctions relief or get more pulled punches and a softer Western policy on Iran.
We always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Live from Washington, Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.